Okay. On to our final presentation, last but not least. Have everybody come to our Zoom. Okay. So just another reminder that the CEU will award 1 credit hour. Please remember to write those code words down and recall those for the questionnaires. And last but not least, I'd like to just introduce you to Kyle. So Kyle McClure is a therapist at Resolve Counseling and Wellness. In addition to utilizing his training in EMDR, Kyle enjoys working with couples and those with substance use issues. Kyle also spent a significant portion of his counseling career at Lake Mary, a psychiatric residential treatment facility that serves children 6 to 21 years old, with both intellectual and developmental disabilities. In this time working both as a therapist, eventually founding and leading Lake Mary's PRTF training department, Kyle was part of the center's team actively working to address burnout, compassion, fatigue, and other struggles caregivers experience. When he's not working as a therapist, Kyle finds great joy in connecting with his wife and 3 young children. Welcome, Kyle.
Okay, I'm just right there. All right. Well, hey, everybody. We are going to talk about self-care here for the next little bit. And to start us out, it's not going to the next slide.
Click it one more time.
There we go. It did it. All right. So I've titled this a self-care presentation that doesn't suck. And I want you guys to know that that is an aspirational goal. So if I don't reach it, that's one thing. But know that that's what I'm shooting for. Hopefully I get there. So without any further ado, we'll just get right to it. So we are going to talk about 10 self-care hacks that we're not going to talk about hacks. We're not going to talk about anything like that. Please don't check out on me. I'm just making a joke. So we're going to talk about self-care a little bit. Hopefully this will be different than anything like this that you've been to before. We're going to try to approach this from a little bit different of an angle, or at least different for me. I don't think I've been to anything that kind of approached this way. So let's start first of all. I want everybody who's out there, I want you to take out a piece of paper or a device or whatever you have in front of you. And I want you to make a list for yourself of 5 things that you do right now to take care of yourself. Okay. Whatever those 5 things are for you, you can go ahead and just take a minute and make that list for yourself. All right, I'm going to start going. If you still are writing stuff, you can still keep writing stuff. That's great. So if you're anything like me, you've been to a few of these presentations, and maybe the idea of going to another one made you roll your eyes a little bit. And that is okay. And I think from my experience, understandable. And my guess is that some of you out there have sort of what you do to take care of yourself is on lockdown. And if that's true, I think that's great. And if you want to stick around for an hour, you get CEU out of this, and You will find that I am an affable and middlingly funny guy, so you might actually enjoy the time as we talk about these things. So we are going to, so just as a housekeeping thing, we are going to, this is geared mainly for therapists, and because that's where I started this at, that I was thinking towards therapists when I started this. It'd be good for anybody, I think, but like also there's going to be a few slides that are very therapist specific. So so if you stick with us through those things, if you are not, but I think that it will be helpful for anyone. All right, and with that, so I think that we probably didn't get that. So so we I'm not going to give you a list of specific things. I'm going to be more general, right? But I think it might be good to have a list of specific things. So one of the things I talked about was having you guys enter stuff in the chat. So if you guys want to go through as we're talking and just enter stuff that you do in the chat, because I'm sure that there are things that you guys do that I would never think to do, so but might enjoy doing. So so if you guys want to do that as we're going through the presentation, feel free to jump in there and do any of those things. All right, so with that, let's start with the why of this. So okay, so why is this important? So some of the things that we as therapists and in other careers and professions as well that people deal with are burnout, compassion fatigue, secondary traumatic stress, and vicarious trauma. So we're going to talk about those for just a minute. Really going to kind of plow through this stuff pretty quick because I feel like, once again, this has been in every self-care presentation that I've ever been to before. So if you're anything like me, this is a bit of review, but we're going to go through it just a little bit so that if anybody's kind of new to this, they get at least a sketch of it. Okay. So burnout is, oh, look at those question marks. That's awesome. It's hilarious. All right. So burnout, it has three elements: emotional and physical exhaustion, depersonalization, and decreased sense of accomplishment. And they usually actually happen in that order. So like you start feeling emotionally or physically exhausted. Really, to keep yourself safe, you start depersonalizing or distancing yourself from the work that you do. And then the third thing that happens is you begin to feel this sort of decreased sense of like, why do I do this? I'm not doing well at this. And really, with a lot of human services fields, like it's not really work you can do at a distance. So once you start distancing yourself from the people you're serving, the people you are working with, you do feel that. You feel that disconnection. You feel that lack of accomplishment. So it makes a lot of sense that those things would go along with that. So so those are sort of the things to look out for, but it usually goes in that order, guys, and it really starts with that emotional and physical exhaustion. So once again, just the thing to keep on point about there. So compassion fatigue is the physical, emotional, and psychological impact of helping others, often through traumatic experiences. Saw a place where it said that compassion fatigue and burnout have been called the cost of caring. I thought that was pretty good. Yeah, so anyway, I'll leave that there. The next thing is secondary traumatic stress. So that is the emotional duress that results when an individual hears about firsthand trauma experience of another, and that can often lead to vicarious trauma, which is the experience of trauma symptoms that result from being repeatedly exposed to other people's trauma and their stories of traumatic events. So taking a step back from that a little bit, I think there's some interesting things in there, and I pulled some of this stuff from a few different sources, but I think they weave together well. So defining the difference between what's a stressor, what's a stress, and what's trauma. So a stressor is something that sort of inspires stress, like it's a thing that's happening, right? And stress is sort of your neurological, physical response to that stressor. Interesting enough, stress will really end soon after the stressor goes away. And trauma is really when the stressor is over and the body keeps reliving that trauma, that stress. So yeah, all right, so we're going to keep going. Go on here. Catch up. So let's talk about how this affects us. So about 70% of adults have experienced some sort of trauma in their lives. Personal trauma histories correlate with higher rates of compassion fatigue and burnout. So if you have a personal history of trauma, you may end up having more compassion fatigue, you may end up having more burnout. And you're more susceptible to those things. What are some other factors that show up? And some of these next few slides are a little counseling oriented, just like I talked about before. So how does that show up? Well, you find that there's other, well, here, let me say that a different way. So more factors of susceptibility. So age, if you're a little older, you tend to be less susceptible, younger, more susceptible. Years of experience, we'll talk about that more in a minute. Training specifically in trauma and how to deal with trauma, and learning an evidence-based practice to work from. And what is the workplace dynamics? Let's start with workplace dynamics there just a little bit, get into that a little bit more. So I don't know, I know a few people that I graduated with that that lasted less than 3 years. And I think that probably a lot of us, if we really think about it, we know a few people that did not last for very long in the role of a therapist. And there's really high turnover in the first 3 years in most human services fields. What contributes to that is workplace climate. Like, so what's the culture like? What is the caseload like? What's the severity of the symptoms of the people that you're serving? Inversely, smaller caseloads, less paperwork, more flexibility about when and how the work is done, tends to correlate to lower levels of burnout. So keep moving. I'm kind of trying to get through this stuff because I feel like this is the obligatory, but we're going to get to the meat of it. So we'll keep moving. So the work environment, right? So demanding nature of the work. One thing I read said that therapy has a demanding nature to it. It's a grinding trajectory. It's loneliness. I mean, you are there with that person and oftentimes can't really share what your experience was of that time. You are isolated from other people that could, sort of share that burden with you. And so you are kind of alone in the things that you're hearing and the things that you're dealing with. So those are all things that are important to keep in mind. The other thing that showed up consistently when I was researching that in this end of things was that therapists are resistant to self-care. And I'm not meaning you're resistant to self-care. So this is a book that I have on the bookshelf in my office. It says Simple Self-Care for Therapists. And I am sure that this is probably a great book. But in the last 2 years that I've owned it, I have not actually opened it at any point. So I'm not above this. In fact, I think sort of this presentation was as much for me as it is for you guys. So I learned a lot. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to find out more about myself. So to round out this piece, though, a therapist being distressed when they are like doing the work affects the care that they give. It affects the way that they show up in the room. And then once again, that the therapist's not taking care of themselves. And then this piece of like, I can't show up for my clients because I'm taking care of myself. That really shows up consistently once again in the stuff that I read. So we're going to switch gears a little bit here and talk about like a few other things. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the soup kitchen problem, which is your first word that I'm supposed to point out to you. I put it in yellow text so I wouldn't forget it, that I'm supposed to say, oh, remember this. So the soup kitchen problem is this. So imagine that you are, which you probably are, but just imagine that you're really upset that people go hungry. You're really mad that people don't have enough food to eat. They don't have enough, and it really gets to you. And so you say, you know what? I have to do something. I have to do something about this problem. I can't save everybody, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out my biggest pot, put it on the stove, and I'm going to cut up the vegetables. I'm going to put the water in, put the broth, put the, maybe put the meat in, depends on, what you like and that stuff. I'm going to do all that stuff. And you make this big pot of soup. You open your door and let people in. You start dishing out soup, and you dish out soup, and you dish out soup. And everybody's eating, everybody's satisfied, everybody's happy, and you feel this great joy welling up in your heart because you've done something to change this problem. And then at the end of the day, you realize that you have not left yourself any soup. And you say, that's okay. That's okay. I don't need, I can do a day without soup. So the next day, get your pot out, cut up your vegetables. You put some beans in that day because somebody said, I'm a vegetarian. You didn't have anything for them. So, you like cook up another big pot of soup. And everybody comes in, you dish it out, and you dish it out, and you dish it out. Everybody's happy, everybody's satisfied. And then those people leave. And you realize, I did it again. I did not leave any soup for myself. How long does it take for us to get to a place where that actually begins to affect us and begins to affect our ability to, be there for those people, but really just take care of ourselves? So with that, that's the soup kitchen problem in a nutshell. So remember the words, and we'll move on to the next thing. So that is one way of viewing this. The next one that I'll talk about, which is sort of like it, but a little bit different, so we're going to talk about it too, is something called human giver syndrome. And this comes from Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. There'll be a few things in this from that. If you are interested in finding out more about that, some interesting ideas and stuff in that. So the idea of human giver syndrome is that we are sort of trained or brought up or live in a world where it's considered like good and laudable and like a great thing for you to be giving of other people and giving towards other people, and to really just give your time and your energy and whatever you have to take care of the other, which, if you ever watched the news, any human interest story is probably going to have a human giver element to it, but there's also another side of that that they talk about in the book when they talk about human giver syndrome. So I'm going to read this. I edited it a little bit if you're familiar with the book, but I changed it a little bit around, but the heart of the thing is the same. So they describe it as having 4 core components. The first being believing that you owe the world to be attentive to the needs of others while being happy, calm, generous, and put together. Secondly, that it's believing that anything less than always being happy, always being calm, always being as generous as you possibly be, always being put together in presentation, is actually failure. So anything less than that is failure. The next piece is failure deserves punishment that can be easily doled out by your inner critic. So that voice that tells you you're doing things wrong all the time. And the last piece is that you believe that the 3 statements I said before are actually normal, true ideas that everybody should just believe are actually okay, which sort of is not true. Because we think of human giver syndrome, we think about helping that person up, but what it's really more like is this. If you notice, the person holding the umbrella is getting really wet right now. So like taking care of other people sometimes doesn't take care of us. And I do think it's a systemic cultural problem, we are trapped in a culture that tells us to not listen to or pay attention to our own needs. I jokingly called it the anti-embodiment culture. But so we'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute. But like really, like if you think about it, like we have a whole system in this world that's not based on what our body and our self is telling us to do. We don't, do we sleep when we're tired or eat when we're hungry? Can we recognize our own stress? Oftentimes the answer to that is no. We sleep when we have to sleep because we have to get up at a certain time. And we get up at that time, whether we're still tired or not. And we eat when our lunchtime is, whether we're actually hungry at that time or not, because that's when it's scheduled on the calendar. And that's when we have the time to do that. And, we kind of like have learned that like we don't get to experience stress because that might affect our ability to take care of everyone else. So we just need to push that way down and not deal with it, right? So we are dealing with those things. So anyway, so I like well, let's just keep going. So in the same culture, it tells you that self-care is lazy, it's selfish. You should feel guilty about spending time on that. It leaves you in this place where you devalue praise from other people. It leaves you in a place where you don't recognize your own accomplishments. One example of that is moving a goalpost. Yeah, I got to here, which was the goal, but realistically, I need to get to here. I'm not going to allow myself to have a win when I actually have a win. And I put etc. there because I just felt like, man, I could keep going on this, and I don't want to spend that much time on this because I think the point is made, and so I'm going to move on. So I'm going to move on. So what do you do about this? So I was doing a presentation on self-care one time, and I had a slide that looked a lot like this in it. I said, what do you do about that? And I flipped to this slide. I actually didn't even realize I'd flipped to the slide when I did it. I just actually accidentally hit the clicker. And somebody in the room said, well, you go to the gas station. And then somebody in the front row said, should have gone to the gas station a quarter tank ago. And of course, in the back of the room, somebody said, but I know my car. I just wonder, and it just brings back this idea of like how many of us are going through life, giving all the soup to everybody else, saying, I know my car. I know that I can power through this. And, and if you walk away with nothing today, walk away with the idea that maybe you don't need to power through anything. Maybe you don't need to do that. All right, so we're going to sort of switch gears with this though, and we're going to talk about a little bit of the sort of ideas and framework of maybe engaging with this piece differently and engaging in this thing differently. So the next piece of this is specific therapists again. So some factors that help resilience with therapists, a consistent self-care routine helps with therapist resilience. Doesn't stop us from not doing it, but it does help us when we do it. Personal trauma history actually correlates with both higher levels of compassion fatigue, but also higher levels of compassion satisfaction, which is the satisfaction you feel when you worked with somebody who has those issues, but you see that working with them has got them to a different place or got them to a safer place or a better place. Once again, as we talked about before, more control of your work situation, more years, a higher level of experience doing the work that you're doing. All those factors mitigate compassion fatigue. More training on how to recognize both burnout and all those other kind of traumatic things, secondary traumatic stressors and vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue. Being able to have more ways of recognizing that in yourself. More tools to help highly traumatized clients. So if you have more things that you can do with somebody who experiences a lot of trauma, that is maybe more, the next one's working from model to treatment, but is more standardized where I'm applying the formula you know, like it allows you to be there with the person, but also insulates you a little bit at the same time. Working from a treatment model. Yeah, I just talked about that. All right. So let's talk about some more broad generalities. So I think there's a piece where you're not going to be able to do this until you can maybe embody a little bit better. So how are the things in your life affecting you? Are you listening to the signal that your body is giving you? Do you know when you're hungry? Do you know what that even feels like to be hungry? Sometimes we just eat and eat and eat, and we don't really know when we're hungry. Sometimes we are tired, but we push through. I just found out this week, was horrified to find out that my caffeine source, my coffee, what it really does is not give me energy, but blocks the chemical that signals that I'm actually tired. And like, what is a better metaphor for a terrible thing to be doing to yourself than blocking the thing that lets your body tell you that you're tired? So I drink coffee today, but I'm wrestling with that a little bit. Anyway, can you tell when you're relaxed? Can you tell when you're stressed? How do you carry stress in your body? Like for me, I carry stress in my shoulders. Like my shoulders are tense. I can recognize that and say, okay, what's going on with me? If I'm really stressed, my jaw locks up. And if I'm really, really, really stressed, my eye starts twitching. I don't get a lot of eye twitching. I'm going to get there, but I know that can happen. So like, and I try to recognize it at shoulders and say, what is going on right now that is affecting me in this way that I'm carrying this, and try to do something about it. So can you recognize that in your own body? Where are you carrying stress, and allow yourself to take action when you do see that is a thing that's happening for you? I have no idea where we're at. What kind of time do I get?
Doing great.
Okay.
3:23.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to talk about your schedule a little bit, and I noticed I did not say scheduling. I'm talking about your schedule. So we will, slide got messed up. The next slide got messed up. So this will be fun. So this is supposed to say important and not important instead of important and not. So, but maybe that's a better way of saying that, really. Important over here. This is really just not anything, right? So this is I think it's called a Covey square. I saw a couple other names for it, but so the idea of this is that is like forming a matrix in your mind of what is important and what is not important, and what things are urgent and what things are not urgent. And sort of the idea with this is that we tend to do the urgent and important things. Like those things just get done. They need to be done soon, and they are important, so they get done. The next thing that tends to actually get done the most, if you're not careful, is the not important but urgent things. So if something is not really that important, but somebody, maybe you or maybe somebody who's telling you, says that that's a high priority, sometimes you tend to like go to that thing and think like, gee whiz, I better work on that. I better get that done. So the sort of the third box there is the important but not urgent box. And this is where if we're honest about it, a lot of us put self-care. It's important, but it's not urgent. I don't need soup today, So I think that is probably a place where some of us put that self-care piece. While we're there, just to draw the line, if something is not important and not urgent, you probably don't ever have to actually do it. So if it's on your radar at all, start asking yourself questions about, why am I even thinking about this? All right, so if we I think that a really good thing would be for people to walk away from today, if nothing else, realizing that maybe the important, not urgent self-care actually should be important urgent self-care. All right. And I resist talking about this way, because I feel like you know, there's enough people like wagging their finger at you and telling you like, well, you got to take care of yourself. You know, and then we go, yeah, and we don't do it. You know, I feel like there's enough of that like, I don't want to be one more person wagging my finger at you. And so I hope that you hear my heart in that. So let's talk about a little bit more about how to work on figuring out a schedule that works for you. So another way to sort of reframe self-care is kind of like taking on the idea that, like, you know what, self-care is going to feel unproductive sometimes, especially in the moment. It's going to feel like, boy, I have a list of things to get done and I am not getting them done right now, you know, and that's true. You're not getting them done. You're getting other things done. You're taking care of yourself in other ways. All right. I have a lot more things I can say there, but I think that that's enough there. I think we're going to keep moving forward. Okay. So I got a little PowerPoint happy on the slide. And so that's when I figured out I should probably just take a break. This is after I made this slide. So struggle for balance, right? So, and again, a lot of this is from the burnout book that I was telling you about earlier, The Secret of Unlocking the Stress Cycle. So there's a lot of this pulled from there. So one idea that I would give you guys is to actually track your schedule and just like, and really try to do it like sort of no judgment. This is just good information. We're just going to try to find out what's going on, what our life really looks like, not like the idealized schedule that's on your calendar, but what did your day actually look like? Where did you get pulled in different directions? When is, you know, like how long does it actually take for you to fix dinner for your kiddos? That's me. And, you know, how long does it actually take you to get your kiddos up and out the door to go to school? Like how long do these things actually take? And then, you know, and when you start doing that, this is going to give, once again, that inner critic a lot of fuel. It's going to give a lot of places for you to be told that you're not doing well, you're not doing good enough, that you need to be doing something different, and you're wrong for doing things the way that you are doing them. So just be aware of that and really try to have that sort of non-biased, this is good information, this is good for me to know, and try to pull away from that sort of toxic perfectionism as you like find out that your life is not what you thought your calendar was, you know, because our life isn't what our calendar is. It's what like our calendar was, and then what filled in the gaps as our calendar, you know, was playing out. Many people can see in a week and like you can see in a day and a week, like are you being effective with the people you're seeing? Are you being effective with the amount of work that you're doing? Is there a level to which like you could spread things out or move things around or do less or do more in a different area that would allow for you to have a different sort of engagement with this piece? So question for you, not expecting an answer because, you know, video, but you know, you guys, just something to think about. But like when you start tracking your schedule and seeing like places where like maybe, oh, you know what, I didn't take any time to do whatever self-care thing that I was thinking I would do, and I pushed it off. When you start noticing that that's actually in your schedule, like, you know, like these are some good questions to ask. And second, and to that same point, does your schedule allow you to take care of you? Just one example of that is that most of you are I'm assuming, not machines, and probably need 8 hours worth of sleep. Now, some of you are freaks of nature and you are on either end of the bell curve, and maybe you can get by with 5 hours or need 12 hours, and that's fine. Probably everybody listening to this, statistically speaking, needs about 8 hours of sleep a night. Are you getting 8 hours of sleep a night? And when is the last time that you got 8 hours of sleep in a night? there's people in the room right now sort of looking at me with guilt in their eyes. So anyway, so the rub of which is, this is just another area where, like, are you taking care of yourself, right? Are you allowing the time that you actually need to do the thing that allows you to live your life more fully and to do the thing that you need to do to take care of yourself? So, so next I'm going to switch into some sort of a like, what do you do next? So you track your schedule, you figure out what your life actually looks like, not what you think your life looks like from the calendar that you put together. And you start like thinking about like, how do I change stuff, right? All right. So I'm going to try to do this. So at some point in my life, I became a prop comic. I'm not really sure when that happened, but I'm going to do this right now. And I might need to, okay. So let me see if I can tip this down just a tad. Ooh, not so much. Oh.
I'll just move over.
No, she's gonna hold it. She's awesome. It's Katie, she's gonna hold it. She's doing awesome. All right, so let's say this is your day, right? And you have all the busyness of the day, all the things you have to take care of, the little things that pop up, and they just fill up a good portion of your day. And you decide that, you know, I'm going to get all the stuff done I got to get done. And then I'm going to put in my self-care, and I'm going to get ahead on my cooking and really get those meals taken care of. And all of a sudden the stuff that you need to do to take care of yourself got taken, like you don't have space for it because you prioritize the busyness. You guys remember urgent and important? So what happens if we do that differently? So we take the same size, and we take those big rocks, right? Those things that are most important to us, and we put them into, I'm sorry for anybody who has sensory stuff, because this is really a lot louder than I thought it would be. So you take those big things, you put them in there, right? They're in there. And then you take that same busyness of the day. And what do you know? Hang on. Almost like I planned it. So the point is that all that other stuff is going to probably happen anyway. But if you prioritize the busyness, over the important, sometimes you end up leaving the important behind. But if you can prioritize the big stones, the big rocks, sometimes there's room for more stuff than you think. So, and if you're wondering, yes, that is rice from a sensory box, because I'm a therapist and that's how things work sometimes. All right, so self-care is a big rock. That's the point of the thing. That's the bullet point, right? Self-care is a big rock. You gotta find that where that's going to be in your schedule and make time for that. And sort of on the same framework is this idea of Parkinson's law. So Parkinson's law is the idea that a task will expand to fill the time that you give it. So an example of that might be if you are, writing a training on self-care, and you have several months to do it, and you go through and you do a ton of research on statistics, which ends up with, I think, one or two of which actually end up in your presentation. Because you weren't being very pragmatic with the time, and the idea of that is that this is Parkinson's law, that the rice and the beans, or the small stuff, fills up your day before the big stuff can't fit in anymore, because those things will expand to fill the space that you leave open for them. And so here's another example. As you get to where you start figuring out, like, how do I need to change things in order to do things differently? Where's places where I can say no, one big no, instead of needing to say no over and over and over again? An example of this might be like, I don't see clients on Saturday, or I don't see clients on Sunday, or I don't see, clients after a certain time or before a certain time, or, like I I come in late on this day so I can, prioritize taking care of myself. I know this is radical, but just like, what do you need to do in those places to take care of yourself? Like, is there a place where you, instead of having to say no to everyone that asks about a certain thing, can you just say, I don't do this line, I don't do this thing at all? And that's I've said no to the whole thing. So the next one is the example of saying the answer is either hell yes or the answer is no. So there's a whole book about this, by the way. But the idea of this, guys, is that like you are an overcommitter. I'm an overcommitter. If you are an overcommitter, you have to figure out how to limit yourself. And one of those things that you might need to do for a little while to get sort of your life back and get sort of more control over your schedule is to give yourself like the ability to say no. And one thing that can kind of help you is to have a different frame around it. And this idea that it's either hell yes or it's a no. And the idea is, if I am so excited about something that I can't imagine not doing it, then it's a hell yes. And anything short of that, oh, that'd be really fun. Oh, that'd be interesting. Anything short of that is a no. Say, for instance, if you felt like you were behind on stuff and you needed to do some things that you weren't keeping up with as well as you would like, and somebody came to you and said, hey, Kyle, can you do a presentation on self-care? And you said, yeah, that'd be interesting. Sometimes the answer should be no. Anyway, so is that passive aggressive? I don't know. I thought it was funny, but anyway, no, but Amber still asked me to do stuff. It's fine. I need to learn to say no. It's not your responsibility. All right. So anyway, the next thing is setting up appointments for stuff. So, and this is something Lori here at our office said one time that I thought was just like, I was like, wow, you're amazing. Come down from the mountain and said that so that we can all glean from that. The idea of this is that you like sort of make taking care of yourself like an opt out. Like your default is that you're going to do it, which is great in and of itself. And the practicality of it is like you go and you like make an appointment and you pay for something in advance, and maybe you're taking a class, maybe you learn how to scuba dive, I don't know, whatever it is you learn to do. But like you've already paid for the class. If you miss it, you're not going to get that money or that time back, and you are choosing to opt out of it rather than a thing that you always have to opt in for. And this kind of ties back to that idea of like sort of that idea that comes with saying one big no, right? Instead of saying a lot of little, you're saying a big yes, and then like the default is yes. So that can be super helpful to people. Okay, how are we doing? All right, so all right, and how long do I have? 10 more minutes. Okay, so I have to wrap this up in 10 minutes. This seemed way shorter when I ran through it earlier today, and yep, that is normal. All right, so what do you do in these situations? What are the things that you need to do? Well, once again, I'm not going to give you a very exacting list, but you do the normal stuff, the boring stuff, tell everyone else that they need to be watching. Are they letting themselves rest? Are they getting sleep? Are they prioritizing exercise or moving their body? Are they watching what they eat? Do they get all their food through their car window? Like what is going on with that stuff? All the boring stuff that you're regularly telling people to do. Get outside, move your body, have exercises in gratitude and mindfulness, all those things that we tell everybody else to do as therapists, but like that we tell everybody else, hey, this seems to work for people. All of those things are things that you can do. And that's the thing. And the thing is that people like think that is boring and that they shouldn't do it. But hey guys, boring is good. We could use more boring. We need more mindless wandering things in our life. So so we have these things in our pocket. We have 1980 supercomputers that everybody just carries around with them like it's a normal thing. And we don't have any, like, we eliminated boredom from our lives. We don't experience boredom anymore, right? We don't allow ourselves to. We don't have to, so why would we? And I think that actually allowing boredom is a great thing. I think that you will have ideas about a thing that you wouldn't have had if you were constantly filling up everything with stimulation and something going on for you. Not to mention, there's some other things about looking at a screen all the time. So, but I can't go off on that rabbit trail. So, so mental rest is not idleness. There's a difference between those two things, and I really think there's actually value in what my wife and I call stare at the wall time. And that's just, and if nothing else, it lets you recognize something about yourself and where you're at in that moment of like, oh, well, I'm kind of dazing out, so something's going on with me. Something, I can recognize something about myself from that. So, guys, I think it's really important that we don't push away the idea of letting ourselves be bored. So I'm advocating for boredom. You're welcome. And sort of, I think one of the last big pieces, although I'm not remembering what I got next, but so one of the last big pieces though is community. So I think that connecting with people is super important, preferably somebody that understands what you go through. So if you have a really stressful job working with a certain population or working in a certain structure, nobody is going to understand what you're going through like the people that are next to you in the middle of that thing, in the middle of that time of trial, in the middle of that thing that went horribly wrong, or the middle of that thing that went horribly well, right? There's this idea that like community is bonding, and that one person I heard talk about it said that sadness, like trials are halved when you share them, and that joys can be doubled because you're sharing your joy with somebody else. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think there is a lot of value to this community piece, and we're stuck in a system once again that devalues this, that says that individualism and self-reliance are the pinnacles, and it devalues your need for a relationship and your need for help from others. If I didn't feel like help from others was a good thing, I would not be doing what I do. Having community, having shared experiences, being part of something bigger, and I'll own for me that I can believe this idea for someone else, and I do struggle to believe it for myself. I do struggle to follow through with this piece specifically for myself. So I'll own that. So, yeah, so a lot of the same stuff. I think I even said some of this already, but slides. So relationships are powerful. Having community, having connection, being known by a person or people, having trusting and knowing connections, learning to trust the other, pretty important stuff. So one other piece that I think dovetails into this that I'm just going to say real quick, and we're going to move on from it, because once again, I don't want to be the person wagging my finger at you, but therapists need therapy. So just think about that. All right. So you guys remember that list of 5 things? Everybody get that back out, or pull it up, or look up the file, or whatever you got to do to get that in front of you. I'll give you a few seconds while I drink this water right here. All right, so I want you to look at that list of things. I want you to ask yourself the question, when was the last time I did these things? So some of you are probably feeling kind of good about yourself. And you're like, I did pretty good at this. I'm pretty all right. And some of you not so much. And and guys, that's okay. I'm not wagging my finger at you. Once again, I'm saying like, I'm in it with you, right? But it's sort of important to recognize that maybe we're not putting that as a priority. So let's talk about the list of 5 and what to do from there, right? So first of all, take a look at your list. And if there's anything that you haven't done in 6 months, then you may just not be that into it. Just because something served you 2 years ago does not mean it will serve you today. You are different than you were then. You're in a place in your life now. And if you don't have to take it off the list, but like keep in mind that this stuff is going to change as you change, as your priorities change, as your inputs change, stuff is going to change for you. So just be aware that that stuff changes. So if there's something that you're not doing, it's okay. You just might need to figure out something else to put on your list if you're not actually doing that thing. Guys, the best, I'm gonna put a bunch of stuff up here, but we'll go through it a little bit. The best self-care is the self-care you will actually do, okay? The best self-care is the self-care you will actually do. So I'm gonna give you an example that is a little bit aside from that. So if let's say I just decided, man, I am gonna get in shape. I'm gonna really do it this time. And I went out and I got a personal trainer. And he made up a workout for me, and he said, we're gonna get together 6 days a week, and we're gonna do, upper body and legs and all that kind of stuff. We got days we're gonna do different things. And I said, yeah, we're gonna do it. And then I did that for a week and never showed up again. Guys, it would be better for my health if I just took a walk 3 days a week. A short one, like the best self-care, like the best workout is the workout you will actually do. And the best self-care is the self-care you will actually do. So, and what happens is like sometimes people let the perfect get in the way of the good, right? We let that ideal of like, 6 days a week, and I'm gonna have my rest day, and I'm gonna shake in the morning, like I keep going back to the exercise thing, but more broadly, if self-care can only be, taking a day and going to do, somebody in the chat said bird watching, going bird watching for a day, but you so rarely have a day to do that, then can you go bird watching for a morning, or can you go bird watching for a few hours, and can that be okay? I mean, it's not a whole day, but it's a longer time period. It's a shorter time period, but can you get some amount of self-care from that? Okay, so the list of 5 things is something I talked about with people, and some people might have had trouble coming up with 5 things. That's actually not that weird. But you guys should think of 5 things as your starter list, okay? So if you, because really what you need is a longer list with a diversity of things, because you need something you can do if you have 5 minutes, like say, if you had a book full of things you could do in 5 minutes. Something you do in 5 minutes, something you can do if you have a half an hour, something you can do if you have an hour, something you can do if you have $50, like what are the things that take care of you? And is there a variety of them that you can allow for that can meet your needs dependent on where you're at and what you're doing? Variety is important because it allows you to adapt for when the busyness fills up your jar a little bit. Business filled up my jar, but you know what? I can get 5 minutes in, like standing outside and like just looking at the leaves, I don't know, whatever you do, it's fine. So I don't want, like, this could be taken as like, you got to do something every day. And I'm not saying that at all, but I want you to hear the idea behind it. Okay. If you try to do something every day, you may end up doing something 3 or 4 times a week. If you try to do something every week, you may end up doing something 2 to 3 weeks a month, So, and that's okay. That's actually great. Don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. Like, better is better. Improvement is improvement. And don't pigeonhole yourself in saying like, I have to do the exact right way, or it's not okay. That isn't failure, it's progress. So be okay with progress. So taking a step back from this, and this is your next thing that I'm supposed to tell you to remember for the deal that you have to remember it for. Simple is not easy. Okay. So simple is like, I think that like we conflate the two things. Like we make them like they are the same thing, and they're really not. You know, just because something is simple doesn't mean it's not hard. You know, it's and change is hard. Like doing something differently is hard. Like, you know, a lot of what we talked about today were ideas of like, hey, your entire life, you've been trained that being selfless in a sacrificial way is good. And that's actually maybe not so good. So you are going against a lifetime of training to change in a way that makes it to where you can more effectively take care of yourself and others, instead of just taking care of others to whatever level you were able to. And that's a process of change, and that's hard. So, you know, in the middle of that, remember that simple is not easy, not just because you have to remember it, but because you should remember that. But the win short of perfection is also good. And let the little victories actually be victories in the middle of this. So you guys should be really proud of me. I got all the way through this without making fun of adult coloring books one time. So I really thought that would just be like, I'd be making callbacks to that the entire time that I did this presentation. And I don't think I've made fun of them once. Yeah. Okay. Just now, but you know, I just realized that when we were on the slide, I was like, I don't think I've made fun of adult coloring books once. All right. So I think Katie's going to talk to us. Yeah, I don't think there were any questions. A few yays. I'll get out of your way.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. I don't know if anybody noticed, but as Kyle was speaking, the sun was kind of coming out. It's the first time we've seen that in a while, so that was great. Thank you. So we at Resolve just want to sincerely thank you all for joining today. We recognize that this event wouldn't be possible without you and some of our other community members. I want to say thank you for what you do day in and day out. I know this can be a pretty thankless job, and I want to take the opportunity that I do have to just thank you. Let this be a reminder to CARE4U2. These presentations will be available for viewing on our YouTube channel, which will be on our Resolve website. So go ahead and refer to that website for any questions that you might have, and feel free to email care4u2conference@gmail.com should questions arise within the next week or so. Reminder, you must complete the questions to the corresponding presentations by the end of the day on November 5th. So you will receive those CEUs electronically via email. And again, just thank you so much for participating. We hope you have a good Halloween weekend. And we will hopefully see you again next year. Thank you.